Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm going live again here today. I really was hoping to be able to really work on this a little bit more than I was before, and so I want to make sure that I at least cover some of the theory section of this paper before I end for the day, just because obviously composition 4 is going to be due pretty soon, and I want to give you at least some time to be able to see my example of this either live while I'm doing it or maybe afterwards, because this will of course upload to YouTube later. So let me just pull up the rubric again for composition 4 just to give you a feel. If you recall, I'm bracketing the lit review. Last time I talked about how in my project I'm going to wait to fill in the lit review just because we've already done it, and this is a little bit more relevant to probably your interests right now in trying to do a really great job on composition 4. Based on my feedback on the lit review, you're going to see that it's essentially going to look very much the same as composition 3, going back into that document. So again, I'm not going to mention that today. Instead, I'm going to try to work on the theory. Oh, hey, it looks like Ellie's here. She's interested in the lit review as well. Here she is. Let's see. Hey, Kitty. Anyway, she's going to come help us with the theory section now. So if we go back to my research project outline, we had the why statement here, and then we had some stuff about the partisan preferred world state, and then we had some discussion of potential confounders, and then we already had the formal hypothesis statement that I wrote down previously. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, work on this why statement. That's going to be the most important piece of this. So let me go back to composition 4. So we've already got this, a theory of partisan reactions to public health crises. And the very, very first sentence that I'm going to include here in this theory, I'm going to say partisanship likely affects public reactions to health crises because of the overarching, that's maybe a little flowery, because of, we can actually make this even more direct. In the previous thing, my introduction is a little overwritten because I was kind of trying to write it out loud, and that can often lead to language that's too flowery. So let's try to be more direct in our writing this time. I'm going to go through here and really edit this later, but right now let's try to work on the theory. Partisanship likely affects public reactions to health crises due to motivated reasoning. And I'm going to pull out a couple of cites here. I'm just going to remind myself of some of those citations because I don't always remember every single citation, but I can use Google Scholar to try to remind me. So Kahan, motivated reasoning. I'm thinking of a specific example of this. Here we go. Politically motivated reasoning paradigm part 1. This is a piece that I cite a lot in previous research, something I know about, and so I'm going to put that in there. This is actually Kahan 2015, not 2017. 2015. Also, this is in the wrong format. I want to check to make sure that I've got line spacing 2.0. Okay. According... Oh, it's very hard to type when a cat is bumping your fingers. According to... Let's see here. According to prominent scholars, motivated reasoning can be described as a situation in which... Oh, Kitty, come on. Described as a situation in which partisans view the world through a biased cognitive lens. And so again, I've already kind of written some of this stuff down in my outline. Got some of this here, right? I can even bring some of this back in, right? I'm going to do that. I'm going to take that and put it into my composition 4 just for the purposes of being a little bit quicker here. So I might edit this down. But really the thing to notice here is that in this theory statement, I've got a because statement. I've already said due to, but so we've got some definition of motivated reasoning that I've brought in from Kahan and others, In the absence of strong queuing effects, that's one thing that we wanted to be sure that we mention a little bit later, co-partisanship with the incumbent president is expected to diminish concern over public health crises because... I need to underline that. There's no reason for the underlining. Co-partisans will be motivated to view reality more positively than out-partisans. Period. This phenomenon occurs, and we'll see another because here, because partisans seek to preserve their partisan preferred world state. There we go. And so this is kind of again, a pretty concise statement, but nevertheless, it's got a because in there, right? And that's the thing that we really want to know about. Why the heck is this linked? And so it's motivated reasoning, ultimately, that's doing this. A situation in which partisans view the world through a biased cognitive lens. Co-partisanship is expected to diminish concern over public health crises because co-partisans will be motivated to view reality more positively than out-partisans. So this is a pretty dense statement, right? This is a dense paragraph. So I want to continue to elaborate here to be able to help the reader understand what the heck that I mean by this. When it comes, or maybe not when it comes to, public health crises such as viruses, such as viral outbreaks, are likely to follow the same basic pattern observed in studies of the economy and other current conditions. In these when it comes to these subjects, partisans often use motivated reasoning to determine how they should feel about the state of the world. And so here's where I would really ideally want to have an example here. For example, members of the president's party are often quick to view the economy as good or very good, even at the same time that out-partisans see the economy as bad or very bad. And of course I want to bring in some economic voting literature. One thing I'll do again is I'll go back to my research folder here just to make sure I've got all my citations. One thing I like to do is pull up just a random example. I've got this in a lot of different folders, but I've got this bibliography that contains a lot of the citations that I tend to cite sort of over and over in my work. Let's see, here we go. So I could just search this. I'm going to search, you just do a keyword search here for economic. So maybe not that one, not asset property. Maybe I should look for, okay, here we go. Just look at economic voting. Let's see, here we go. Economic voting and political sophistication, that's Bélanger. Cognitive heterogeneity in economic voting. So you can see that having this resource, I've built this up over years and years and years, is a really useful thing to have. Actually, I don't use Microsoft Word very often to produce papers, and so this is actually a bibliographic format that allows APA or Chicago style to get produced. So I actually also painstakingly create these citations in this code essentially over and over. And so normally when I'm writing a paper, I can just type in the parenthetical and will fill in the bibliography automatically for me. I know many of you are probably used to using some kind of other citation manager. This is what works best for me just because I've already built this resource over about a decade of work. So again, it's a little different when you're doing this for the first time relative to if you've done this for 1,000 times. So I'm going to throw in a citation here. So Hansford and Gomez. This is a paper that I read a lot. That's a very useful one. Let's see, other economic voting. Let's cross-national. Yeah. It's for the governor. And actually, this citation here of Stimson is not a bad citation to include here. The Weatherford argument. The Alt et al. This is a good good citation perhaps to include here because it's fairly recent. There's a 1979 James Alt book actually that's a really good resource for economic voting. In the case of England or Britain, let's see who else. This Anderson, it might be the best one to cite though, just because it's a really encompassing sort of piece. Another one that might be good would be the Anderson 2007 piece. That's a review, the annual review of political science. So maybe I'll just do one of those. Anderson 2000, Hansford and Gomez 2015. Okay. So all of those are generally talking about, actually I'm going to go with the 2007 because that's more about the limits, the sort of crisis of motivated reasoning in economic voting. So let's see here. When it comes to these subjects, partisans are often use motivated reasoning. For example, members of the president's party are often quick to view the economy as good or very good. What does word suggest? While. Yeah, we could go with that suggestion. It makes things a little bit more easily parsed. Okay, so there's a little bit more, again, of this explanation of what we're talking about here. But then I want to get back to the actual DV again, right? And again, this is about the why statement. I'm elaborating, I'm drawing on some of the existing research of like something that's parallel, but again, I'm actually making this statement sort of all my own as well. In the realm of public health, it seems likely that partisans will also attach performance in handling a potential crisis to their perceptions of the president's sort of innate. Again, this is why talking out loud and trying to write is difficult. In the realm, it seems likely that partisans will also attach performance. Will similarly associate objective performance in handling the crisis. Similarly, interpret objective performance in handling the crisis through their pre-existing assumptions about the president and their qualities. Those assumptions, due to motivated reasoning, are likely heavily biased. The result is a gap between in and out partisans, those who are predisposed to view the president favorably due to their partisanship will seek to downplay the severity of the crisis, while those who wish to paint the president in a negative light will become increasingly alarmed. And then, of course, so again, we've got, with this theory statement, again, this is the explanation. This is this long form discussion of like why this happens. And specifically, it's introducing the possibility that there's a directionality to this. And that, I think, is one of the most important things to consider, right? This is a really, really important consideration. I want to know about the direction. Why are sometimes partisans going up in this variable, and why are sometimes partisans going down in this variable? And it turns out it's whether or not you're an in or an out partisan, essentially, and it's because of this idea that you have biased reasoning, basically. And so I can go back to my outline. I'd already written a little blurb here about the preferred world state. Right. I'm going to just take this out of this little text box and pop this in and then edit it for just to wrap this up. Right. We don't want this. This is, let's see. Those who wish this phenomenon occurs when partisans view reality through the lens of their preferred world states. Okay, you know. The view of the world in which the, okay. A working definition for this phenomenon is, I might just get rid of this actually. This is, just say this is the view of the world. This is a view of the world in which the co-partisans are more competent, successful, capable, and better at preserving the positive state of the world than their political rivals. And of course, I probably want to get some work in here on the preferred world state as well. I'm thinking specifically of this guy Evan Parker Stephen is somebody who kind of like coined this term a little bit. And so I might want to cite that Parker Stephen paper. Where did it go? Here we go. I'll go E.G. Parker Stephen, 2013. Partisans assume that objective conditions are more optimistic than they might actually be. We don't need all these exclamation points. And so, I mean, the corollary, we don't really need the corollary here because we can infer that. So, I like actually be, might be. We could just go with be. So long as the co-partisan is in charge. So, yeah, this is a pretty reasonable, I'll put this on another page just so we can see how long it is. And again, when you're thinking about your projects, I want you to think carefully about like the why, right? This essentially is the mechanism. This is the thing that's going on inside of people's heads that explains why these things link together. When you're doing your project, it might not be as psychological in nature. For mine, it's very psychological and it's based on like an existing theory. For yours, it might simply be like, oh, I think that education is going to be associated with this kind of belief because of some sort of outcome, right? Or like one example that we were working with earlier was education and people's vote turnout. And we were saying there's a lot of threats to validity here, but the pure causal effect might be that you like learn skills in college, for example, that help you get more acclimated to like doing politics in the first place. So you learn like what is it like to participate in a student government? Like, where's my polling place? Like, you meet people who are politically like energized, and so it's not like I learned something from a book. That's like a different mechanism. It's more like I had a social experience in college that like brought me into the political world a little bit more than I otherwise would have been brought into it. And so that's, again, like the kind of discussion that you want to have in here. It's like, what's that thing that like inside the black box that unpacks the why? So again, this is rough and ready. This is not like super detailed. It's not super fleshed out, but it gives us at least a start. But of course, the other thing I want to mention here in one of these sections is I want to mention threats to validity, right? The role of party cues. Okay, that's another piece of this puzzle. All right, so we can say something like, I don't know why this tabbed over again. While, okay, this is again, just to back up, this is associated with going down here, the y, that was the thing we just wrote. I cited a few things, but again, you may be citing a lot of things, or you may be citing nothing. The second part of the theory introduces the possibility of potential confounds. What are the possible intervening and or antecedent variables that our study should look out for? In this case, I don't think there's a ton of a possibility of reverse causality. I'm really not, it doesn't seem very likely that somebody's partisanship is going to have, or somebody's beliefs about COVID is going to have an impact on their partisanship. I mean, like, in the extreme, like margin, maybe, like, there's one person out there who's like, wow, like, I think this is a really serious problem. Like, one party is taking this more seriously than the other now that I'm observing their behavior, and so now I'm going to change parties. But, like, again, partisanship is like a latent identity, right? It's something that it usually works the other way around. So I think there's very minimal threat of, like, a reverse causal link here. It's much more likely that it's going to go in the hypothesized direction, where people's co-partisanship is going to change the way that they perceive reality because they want to make their partisan identities like resonate with feeling good. And so the role of party cues, though, is something that could threaten this relationship. And that is the idea of, like, what happens if the president comes out and says, hey, guys, this is really terrible. This is an extremely bad circumstance, and you need to be really taking this seriously. If the president does nothing, maybe this mechanism we described is at play. But if the president doesn't do anything, then maybe it's actually when the president does make a statement that interprets or anticipates the severity of the crisis, maybe this changes the world here. By the way, our friend is sitting right here with us, so I'll move the camera down just a little bit so she can be on screen with you. Okay, threats to validity. So we want to talk about party cues. All right, so we might say, while motivated reasoning helps to explain that in most cases, co-partisans of the president should view public health with less crises with less concern. There are there are potential exceptions to this. Like state of affairs. I don't know. Somebody can help me write this maybe. Potential exceptions to this situation. Most importantly, this expectation depends upon whether or not the president, they want me to just say whether, whether the president has him or herself, see again, I'm writing myself in circles here a little bit, whether or not the president has publicly cued partisans that the crisis is indeed severe. In that separate case, cued partisans may be most likely to trust the president's message and take to heart the warning, and heed the warning maybe. Cued co-partisans. This means that in cases where a salient cue is absent, partisans are expected to accord with the theory advanced above. Let's see. However, the presence of party cues might reverse the expected direction of the relationship. And so that's something I'm going to specify in just a moment with my hypothesis statement. But another thing that I might want to do here is describe what the heck are these cues? Okay, and so what I'll do is I'll reach into the literature again, and I'll talk about what are these party cues. And maybe I'll look to, for example, this guy, Stephen Nicholson's Polarizing Cues paper in the AJPS in 2012. Again, this is something where, like, in your paper, this is going to be a lot more difficult to do because you haven't read all this stuff before. But for me, this is like a lot more reflexive because as soon as I think about cues, I think about a few citations that are useful to me. So one of these is this guy Nicholson's Polarizing Cue paper. So I'll say something like, by cues, I refer to visible and visible statements by party elites that are intended to signal behavior and interpretations of reality to partisan adherents. And I'll throw in an e.g. here, Nicholson 2012, just to make sure that goes in there. By the way, it's probably good practice to do this. I should probably have been putting these at least as placeholders here in my works cited. So who do we have? Anderson, 2007. Let's just reflexively throw this in here. Parker Stephen we've got in 2013. Who else? Hansford and Gomez, 2015. This is H. And remember, I'll fix these soon. Fix these in post, right? I'll be editing these works cited into full bibliographic citations later. And we've got Nicholson now. LMNOP, right? Nicholson. And notice, I've got one citation in the introduction, which is a not tier 1 source. I've got 4 tier 1 citations in the theory section. I've not included my lit review at all. None of these are probably going to be in my lit review because none of these are actually sources that deal with the actual DV, right? These are all about things that are explaining the link. And so that's one thing you really want to focus on is that this DV description here is absolutely not present. We're not really talking about the DV at all. We're talking about the link, like the black box that goes in between. And so if I go back to this thing, right, we'll see that my lit review, or actually I have my lit review statement. What happened? Courses, research. Let's see, my live stream projects, literature I might want to cite. Yeah, so here's all this other literature that in a previous session I pulled out. A couple different buckets here. My golden bucket has a few things. Again, these are messy citations, and some of these I might turn out not wanting to include. But you can see that none of these things are any of the sources that I've included here in the composition 4 so far. Those are going to be additional citations, bringing my citation count probably well beyond 10. Yeah. So anyway, so here's the threats to validity statement. Co-partisans may be the case by selling it. The presence of party cues might reverse. I might say something here. Party cues therefore represent a possible intervening variable in the present study. Remember, I want to tell me what it is, right? Intervening variable, an antecedent variable is the reverse causality, etc. I refer to visible statements by party elites that are intended to signal behavior and interpretations of reality to partisan adherents. Cues can be signaled through press conferences, official statements, media appearances, tweets, and other public instances in which presidents go public. These cues, partisans, because of their special attention to co-party elites, are the most likely individuals in a society to pay or to receive these Qs. Similarly, because they trust elites, they trust these partisan elites, the Qs might be especially strong drivers of their resultant opinions. Together, these expectations help to suggest that Qs matter for public health or reactions to crises. Okay, so then I can say, actually, I'm anticipating myself. I'm actually like already one step ahead here by saying together, right? I could say something like, I might even delete this statement or edit it to be something a little different. Together, these expectations help to suggest that both partisanship, well, maybe I'll just say matters for determining concern over public health crises. We can formalize these expectations. You can always include a header here. Hypotheses. Formalize these expectations through the following hypotheses below. And now finally we get to the hypothesis section. We'll have a couple of bullet points here. I've got H0 and I've got H1. And so again, if we're writing these hypotheses, we want to think about how we've mentioned that there's this other possible variable that is a threat to our validity here. And so I might use the term all else equal to help sort of signal that we're going to think about the role of partisanship, having accounted for the presence or absence of some of these other potential factors. I'll show you sort of another trick to think about creating multiple hypotheses to deal with intervening variables in a minute, but that's kind of a special topic that we'll hold off on until we get a little bit further into, say, composition 5 and 6. So for now, I'll do my null hypothesis, or H0, all else equal. Actually, I'm realizing that we've already written this down, haven't we? We can use this to be a little bit quicker. Where did it go? Here we go. A comparison of Americans. There we go. This is already a little nicer. I'm going to add that all else equal in there just to signal sort of a placeholder there that this discussion of Qs is going to go away. In a comparison of Americans, I hypothesize that co-partisans of the incumbent president will exhibit, in fact, this is the null hypothesis, so no change, or no difference, or no more or less, maybe. This reads a little better. No more, clarity and conciseness, yeah. Will exhibit no greater concern over public health crises than members of the out party. Word might get mad at me again, but I think that it's really important to have this balance here. It's like really, it's not going to be better, it's not going to be worse, it's not going to be any different, right? This is the null hypothesis in which there's no difference. So we're going to test to see if this is the case, in which case there's no difference, and my sort of elaborate theory that I've created here is just not holding up. Or the alternative possibility, which is that co-partisans of the incumbent president actually do exhibit, right, a decrease in concern over public health crises relative to the members of the out party, all else equal. And so again, we don't need to explain ourselves here. We're just stating these hypotheses for now. But we can see that the hypotheses have a couple of important things, right? They have, what's that? That's the population. Co-partisans of the incumbent president. In this case, I'm making a group comparison. So really, this is like part 1 of the independent variable, and here's part 2 of the independent variable. But throughout the hypothesis, I've got the independent variable baked in. And then concern over public health crises, that's the dependent variable. And so it's all in there. It's all included. And of course, I've got the direction. I've got essentially no direction here, and then I've got this negative direction, a decrease here. So altogether, we can see that without actually, I mean, this is obviously going to be a little longer than a page, maybe 2 pages, 2-3 pages. We can see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say, 5, 6.5 pages of content at the end of the day once I finish my lit review, and that's going to be about it for composition 4. And so you can see it's what, about 4:25. I've been at this for how long? A little while, 30 minutes maybe, and I'm most of the way there. So in the next stream, I'll wrap up that lit review. I'll make sure that goes in there, show you once again the really tight formatting of the Works Cited page, all of those nice citations, including one of these web sources that's not a tier 1 source. And then I'm going to give it a once over, and then I guess I'll submit it to this crazy professor, whoever he is, and hope that he likes it. So actually I can already see that there's a lot of things that I would want to fix here. So maybe he wouldn't like it after all. But at least this is a start, and for a live stream speed run, I think this isn't half bad. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions to this, and hopefully this is useful to you as you seek to create your own theory sections. And in fact, I'm just realizing I'm going to be able to throw this. I'm going to throw this up, share this box or Dropbox folder on Blackboard, so you'll be able to like open this document and read it and look at it as a template. So with that being said, I'm going to go do something else now. Hope this was helpful, and I will talk to you all soon.